Origin just almost reaction. This is 300,000 Russians casualties in Ukraine. Russian invasion documentary by channel Kings and General. Yeah, this is the whole series they've been doing. I don't know how many videos is this already. I don't know. I saw that this is about the latest developments with the latest accident slash whatever you want to call it with the leader of the militia. Right, I already saw a video about it. So this is from Kings and General. I guess they're also going to go with what's the update on the battlefield, I guess. Is there any progression by Russians or Ukraine, whatever, right? Because summer is like when they thought, okay, Russia's probably going to make a move or something. So did they do it? Not, I don't know. Nowadays, it's like, news don't talk about this too much. So I guess, channels like it's the only way I can actually get an update. So yeah, let's do this one. Remember, people, if you like my next, don't forget to subscribe. So I know which videos to react to more. I love history. I don't know if this is history or not. This is ongoing conflict, not history. It's going to be history one day. But this type of is interesting to see it, right? How it's progressed, how is it happening? It's a surprise how Russians are losing the way they are losing, right? Nobody thought of that years ago. Like if this happens, oh come on, of course Russia is going to be dominant. It's not happening, right? So this is very interesting. That's why this one.
More than 18 months have passed since the start of Putin's unprovoked full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Kyiv in 3 days has turned into the biggest war in Europe since World War II. In the second half of August, the focus has gone back to the Zaporizhzhia front, where Ukraine is pushing hard to achieve a decisive breakthrough. We will describe the situation on the battlefield, Ukraine's insistence on taking the war to Russia, the death of the ill-fated and infamous Russian war hero Prigozhin, and much more in this update on the war in Ukraine. And this is another report brought to you by NordVPN, with a special offer available to our viewers at nordvpn.com/kingsandgenerals. More on that in a second. NordVPN routes your internet traffic through servers of your choice all over the world and crucially encrypts all this data during transit. Encrypted data is almost impossible for those spying on you to make sense of, be they advertisers, scammers, criminals, or even official surveillance services. And your IP address will be that of a Nord server and not your actual devices, keeping your business private even further. Privacy is one thing, but also moving your IP lets you do useful things like watch TV shows that are only unlocked for certain regions, which happens all the time on the big services you're already paying for. Or do the opposite and browse stuff only available at home while you're away. And that's only the start, but it's time for the offer. By using our exclusive link, nordvpn.com/kingsandgenerals, you can buy a 2-year plan and get 4 bonus months added on top across all of Nord's plans. There's a 30-day risk-free money-back guarantee. If you start using NordVPN, then decide against it, so there's no harm in at least trying it out. Get that offer and secure your link to the internet at nordvpn.com/kingsandgenerals. After completing the liberation of Uruzhaina by August 16th, the main focus of Ukrainian assaults on the Zaporizhzhia front was Robotyne and the area around it. The geolocated footage already shows that battles were occurring in the center of Robotyne. In the following days, it was reported that the 47th Mechanized Brigade had reached the southeastern outskirts of the village. On August 23rd, the fighters of the 47th Brigade placed the Ukrainian flag in Robotyne. As of early September, Ukraine has fully liberated Robotyne, which it has been fighting for since the start of the counter-offensive. Russia is still launching counterattacks on the southern edges of the village, which shows the strategic value of Robotyne to the Russian army. Zaporizhzhia Oblast consists mostly of open fields, thus any elevation is a natural advantage. Robotyne is on such an elevation and overlooks occupied areas in the east and southwest. But so far, Russian attempts to regain control of the village have been in vain. On the contrary, the Ukrainians have expanded their area of control around Robotyne. The AFU has advanced towards Novopokrovka and Novopokropivka since then. There is also visually confirmed information that forward...
So all these things are happening apparently. Yeah, okay. Obviously, this is like the next part of the series that they have ongoing. But yeah. So obviously, Ukraine is pushing back, right? Russians, as far as I know, Russians haven't pulled any big weapons, right? major scale technological weapons. They still have, but they haven't done it, which is going to be catastrophic if they do it, right? I mean, I don't know what implications that's going to have if they use it, because I'm pretty sure most of them are kind of banned by Geneva Convention. But then again, Russia don't think about Geneva Convention that much. So yeah, so far it like. Imagine, I don't know what's go through their head, right? They thought this was going to be over really fast, but it's really not, right? If anything, they're like losing advantage. So I don't know. Sometimes I panic. Like the more they lose, the more there's a chance where they'll use some deadly weapons. That Russia and USA is considered two top military powers, right? And I know people some joke in comments like, "Oh, that's not the case anymore," this and that. But the thing is, some weapons only these two countries have, right, compared to anything else. And right now it feels like they're just using basic weapons rather than some major scale weapons, right? Now obviously Ukraine can get that from West as well, but I don't know. Yeah, right now it feels like technology clearly can give you an edge, because all the weapons, superior weapons Ukraine has now from the West is clearly giving them a major edge, where they should have been having defeat here and there. Instead of that, they're pushing back, right? They clearly should have disadvantage, but they don't, because of these good technology weapons. So yeah.
Ukrainian units are already fighting in the outskirts of Verbova, which means that at least some Ukrainian forces have crossed the first Surovikin line west of the village. So far, we have not seen heavy weapons being deployed by Ukraine in this area, which may indicate that the breach has not happened yet. It is merely Ukrainian recon forces operating in the area. But the presence of Ukrainian forces beyond the first Surovikin line proves that defensive lines are as strong as the forces defending it. Many analysts have focused only on much-discussed Surovikin lines, but footage from the liberated areas of Zaporizhzhia Oblast and reports of Ukrainian servicemen demonstrate that the Russians had strong defensive structures north of these lines too. Dense minefields, many strongholds, and a system of trenches in the open field is a challenging environment to conduct offensive operations, particularly in the absence of air superiority. So Russian defensive structures north of the Surovikin line may have been at least as tough to cross as the Surovikin line itself. Some analysts even argue that the Ukrainian army has already passed the densest minefield in the Robotyne sector, and logically speaking, areas south of it cannot be as densely mined, since the Russians would need wider mine-free corridors to fall back if necessary. On August 26th, Reuters reported a claim by a Ukrainian commander currently fighting in the Zaporizhzhia Oblast, who said that he believes that they have broken through the most difficult line of Russian defenses, and that further advance will be less costly. The Russian command has been sending reinforcements to the Zaporizhzhia front to contain the Ukrainian advance. Elements of the 7th, 76th and 108th Air Assault VDV divisions have been redeployed from the Kherson and North Luhansk front to this end. In this period, Ukraine has also gained some ground east of Urozhaina and south of Rivnepil. It is notable how the Ukrainian success in Robotyne has changed the mood in the West. At the start of the discussed period, many mainstream Western media outlets had expressed pessimism about the Ukrainian counteroffensive. But towards the end of August, their rhetoric became significantly more optimistic. For instance, on August 17th, the Washington Post reported about the assessment of American intelligence, claiming that the Ukrainian army would fail to reach Melitopol, the supposed main goal of the Ukrainian counteroffensive. While on August 24th, the Wall Street Journal reported that the Ukrainian commander-in-chief, Zaluzhny, told American military officials that the AFU is on the verge of a breakthrough. The news reports of Western media outlets often rely on anonymous sources in the US government, and change in the rhetoric, if nothing else, informs about a change of mood in the American elite regarding the Ukrainian counteroffensive. According to Forbes, Ukraine sent the 46th...
right? Nothing might change on the field, but it's all about the mood, right? And also obviously being anonymous tip, like, take that with salt. But yeah, I guess, what happens on the battlefield, it's going to be really hard to pinpoint. But yeah, I guess, you really have to analyze it in deep if you want to really see it. But I don't know. Right now, it feels like Ukraine is doing fine. But again, yeah, the more interesting thing will be like by the end of 2023, where they stand, right? That will kind of show you the picture of what's going to happen in the future. Because if Russia failed to do anything this year as well, right, that's it, right?
Air Mobile Brigade and the 82nd Air Assault Brigade into battle in this period. which means that now almost all the forces dedicated to the counteroffensive have taken part in battles in some fashion. If this report is correct, the next several weeks may prove decisive. Forbes reports that Ukraine's Leopard 2 losses in the south have been exaggerated. They claim that the AFU has permanently lost only 5 of its 71 Leopard 2 tanks since the start of the counteroffensive in June. At least 10 more have been damaged, which are being repaired in Poland and Germany to be sent back to the front. This indicates that even though nominally all Ukrainian brigades dedicated to the counteroffensive in the south are already fighting, many main battle tanks are kept in reserve in order to use them later if the AFU achieves a decisive breakthrough. They will likely continue trying to advance along the TO408 highway towards Tokmak and attack towards Verbova and Ocheretaveta to expand its salient south of Orikhiv. In the Velika Novosilka section, Ukrainian assaults have been less regular since the liberation of Uruzhaina, but they will probably continue their attempts to reach the Kamenchik and Staromlenivka line as an intermediate goal. On other fronts of the war, the situation has not changed much. On the Kherson front, raids of Ukrainian groups on the left bank of the Dnipro continue, but they have probably lost their positions near Kozachyi Laheri. On the North Luhansk front, Russia made minor gains near Sinkivka and Serebryansky Forest, but Ukraine has stabilized the situation here after continuous gains by the Russian army in this area in the past few weeks. On the other hand, Ukraine's advance around Bakhmut has been negligible too. It was reported that on August 20th, Ukrainian troops gained some ground along the MO3 highway towards Bakhivka, but their advance has largely stopped since the capture of dominant heights near Klishchiivka. In this period, the Ukrainians picked up the pace of aerial strikes and saboteur attacks in the Russian rear, while Russia continued targeting Ukraine's port infrastructure and other civilian areas. On August 16th and 23rd,
Yeah, I mean, Russia is constantly attacking port areas, right? Rather than being aggressive here. Like, what are they thinking? What are their goal right now? I don't know. It's really hard to really process what's going through their head, what they're planning right now. I don't know. It feels like everything's going kind of like slow and cold. I don't know.
Shahed drones were launched on Odessa and Mykolaiv oblasts, damaging some of the port infrastructure. This did not prevent Ukraine from shipping some of its grain into international markets on August 16th and 27th, as Kyiv wanted to demonstrate that Russia's permission would not be necessary to ship grain out of the Black Sea. On the other hand, it is reported that Russia is in talks with Turkey on shipping its grain to international markets without Ukraine's participation. Perhaps the most painful Russian airstrike in this period was launched on the drone exposition in Chernihiv on August 19th, which killed 7 people and injured more than 100.
Whoa.
On the same day, the Ukrainians launched a drone strike on Soltsi Air Base in Novgorod Oblast, damaging 1 or 2 Tu-22M strategic bombers. On August 23rd, Ukraine destroyed Russia's S-400 Triumph modern air defense system in Crimea. On August 30th, Ukraine launched a massive drone attack on 6 Russian regions, destroying 2 Il-76 transport aircraft and damaging 2 others at the Pskov airfield.
Wait a minute, that's at Moscow? They did drone attack in Moscow as well? Like, that's way too close, isn't it? Like, damn. Putin must be thinking like, oh, I didn't see that coming. I didn't see the war coming literally at my doorstep.
Budanov has already stated the goal of these attacks, taking the war to Russia to retaliate against strikes on Ukrainian soil. Land combat will inevitably become less intense with the start of the rainy season, and we can assume that both sides will launch more aerial attacks on each other. Kyiv got some excellent news in terms of military aid in the second half of August. On August 15th, the Swedish government announced the 13th military aid package to Ukraine worth $314 million, which included spare parts and ammunition for CV-90 armored combat vehicles and Stridswagen 122 tanks, along with trucks, demining equipment, and air-to-air Yatrobot 99 missiles with a range of 75 kilometers. On August 17th, Germany delivered another military aid package, including 2 more Iris-T air defense systems, 10 ground surveillance radar systems, trucks, and ammo. On August 18th, the keel was laid for Ukraine's second Ada-class corvette in Istanbul. On August 18th, some official information about Western-made jets for Ukraine finally came through. Zelensky stated that Ukraine's pilots started test trials on Swedish Gripen fighter jets. This was followed by Zelensky's announcement that the Netherlands will give Ukraine F-16 fighter jets after Ukrainian pilots complete the training. The Netherlands has 42 F-16s, and the exact number of fighter jets to be given to the Ukrainian Air Force will be declared following the completion of the training. Denmark also pledged F-16s, giving a more concrete number: 19 jets, 6 of...
Imagine that literally everyone is like, oh, we are giving Ukraine something. What is going through Russia's head at this point? Like, every single person is like giving something to Ukraine. Well, Russia's basically fending for themselves. I mean, come on. I don't know how they didn't see this coming. Like, if you're going to be aggressor in 21st century, you really think people are going to band together to help the guy who you're attacking? I don't know. I don't know where this is going to lead, but yeah.
Them by the end of 2023, 8 in 2024, and 5 in 2025. Later, Norway promised at least 2 F-16s as well.
This war is
According to the New York
out,
Times, the United States will also train Ukrainian pilots starting in September. It is a long-anticipated announcement for Ukraine. Ukrainian diplomacy has been working hard to persuade the West to change its stance on the delivery of fighter jets. One may assume that more Western countries will follow up with relevant pledges. The training of pilots will take some time, and it is expected that the Ukrainian Air Force will be able to start using F-16 sometime in the first half of 2024. F-16s are not going to win the war for Ukraine immediately, but they are going to give options to the Ukrainian army, which it lacked so far. They will be an instant upgrade on the Soviet-era jets that Ukraine
F-16s are really,
since they have a more powerful radar, capable of intercepting targets within a range of up to 150 kilometers. The F-16 is compatible with most Western-made missiles, significantly enhancing the ranged capability for the Ukrainian army.
And obviously it will depend, right? There was an incident between Pakistan and India. India had like what, SIGs, Russian SIGs or something, right? Old style. And Pakistan had F-16. Yeah, the F-16 went down. I guess it, equipment gave you an edge, but it really depends like what your training is, right? But yeah, F-16s, a lot of F-16s would kind of give them a really good edge because F-16s are really, really powerful all around.
They will also serve the purpose of mobile air defense systems due to their capability to target Russian jets with missiles like air-to-air AIM-120 AMRAAMs. F-16s will go a long way to improving the Ukrainian army's offensive and defensive capabilities. On August 23rd, the Finnish Prime Minister Orpo announced a military aid package worth 94 million euros. On August 24th, the Turkish military industry corporation Baykar gave a TB2 Bayraktar drone to Ukraine dedicated to its Independence Day. Also on that day, Norway promised $140 million worth of energy supplies to Ukraine. Lithuania pledged a military aid package worth $44 million. Germany delivered Patriot missiles, 8 drone detection systems, and 40 RQ-35 recon drones. On August 29th, the United States announced a $250 million military aid package, which includes AIM-9 air-to-air missiles, mine-clearing equipment, HIMARS munitions, and Javelin anti-tank weapons. The bad news for Ukraine is that the resolution of the ATA-CMS matter does not seem any closer. According to the Washington Post, the Pentagon thinks that the United States is not in a position to spare any ATA-CMS missiles for Ukraine, as it may hurt America's readiness to oppose China if such a conflict arises.
Yeah,
there are still not many updates regarding foreign military support to Russia. Iran remains the main military supplier of Russia. There are reports that the Russian army has started using 120mm mortar shells produced in Iran. Russia is also increasing the domestic production of modified Shahed drones in the Alabuga Special Economic Zone of the Republic of Tatarstan. The Washington Post reported, based on leaked documents from the facility, that Russia intends to build 6,000 Shahed drones by 2025.
Damn, that's a lot.
According to the Financial Times, the USA has offered Iran to stop supplying drones to Russia in exchange for mitigation of the sanctions regime, but it is unlikely that an agreement on this matter is possible in the foreseeable future. It is notable that according to Zelensky, as of August 19th, Russia has launched more than 6,500 missiles and 3,500 drones on Ukraine since the start of the war. Drones and cruise missiles will likely remain as important components of the Russian war strategy in Ukraine.
I mean, obviously...
More news of unrest and conflict inside the Russian elite continued flowing in this period. A Bloomberg article.
Yeah, missiles and drones are kind of like the future, isn't it? Right? No man has to, worry about that. No soldier is needed. It's just drones. I can see AI-powered drones and AI-powered things. They already had AI-powered trucks and things 15 years ago. So, no man can be hurt trying to transport shit, right? So, yeah, this is like, all I'm hearing is like, destroy this, destroy that, pledge this weapon, pledge that weapon. When you really see this as a hindsight, not really seeing countries or anything, you just see devastation. This is so horrendous, right? This is what we humans are. All these fucking resources could have been used for anything, but yep, it has to be used to kill each other. This is so fucked up. Even at 21st century, we are not changed. Thanos, doesn't seem that bad now, does he?
Article on August 19th claimed that security hardliners in the Russian elite are in favor of dismissing Shoigu and Gerasimov, along with launching another wave of mobilization in Russia. Rumors of mobilization in Russia have picked up pace in recent weeks. On August 25th, Budinov claimed that Russia is considering mobilizing a further 450,000 men for the war in Ukraine. On August 22nd, finally some news about Sergei Surovikin came out. Russian media reported about his dismissal as the commander of the Russian Air Force. Apparently, the Russian elite is still convinced that Surovikin's loyalty belonged to Prigozhin during the March of Justice. Speaking of Prigozhin, as widely expected, the imperfect war hero of Russia, Yevgeny Prigozhin, was finally punished for his coup attempt. On August 23rd, Prigozhin and several Wagner commanders, including the neo-Nazi Dmitry Utkin, died in a plane crash. Preliminary information shows that the plane crashed as a result of a bomb explosion on board. There are very few doubts about who the man behind this explosion is. Prigozhin was not going to be pardoned for his treason. If there were any doubts about the future of Wagner, now with the death of Prigozhin and several of the organization's commanders, there are none.
Yeah.
Earlier in August, NATO chiefs...
somebody opposes Putin just in a political level and they disappear or get poisoned. You're going to have an entire attempt of coup or whatever, right? Whatever is called coup, whatever the technical term is. Of course, you're not going to survive.
Stoltenberg's chief of staff stated that the war could end with Ukraine agreeing to give up territories in exchange for NATO membership. Stoltenberg later refuted this claim, but it showed the mood circulating, at least in parts of the Western elites. Since then, Western leaders reiterated their position of unwavering support.
Interesting, as a buffer zone, right? That's what Moscow always needed. Since the Soviet Union collapsed, that has been the biggest concern, like Moscow is way too close to the border. The Soviet Union gave Moscow the ground, right? Like a buffer ground. So if Ukraine gives up a buffer area or whatever, they could talk about, stopping the war or some shit. I can see where this is coming from. Damn. But they're preparing for like multiple years, like 2024, 2025. Like, damn, how long this war is going to stretch? How many resources are going to get destroyed? How many people are going to die? This is absurd.
To Ukraine, and the pledge of F-16s, which will arrive no earlier than 2024, demonstrate that the Western support will likely continue in some shape in the foreseeable future. It is good news for Ukraine, which is increasing the pressure on Russian defenses on the Zaporizhzhia front. Casualties continue mounting for both sides. According to US officials cited by the New York Times, Russia has suffered 120,000 KIA and up to 180,000 wounded in Ukraine, while the Ukrainian deaths were close to 70,000, with 100 to 120,000 wounded. According to the Oryx blog, the visually confirmed losses for Russia as of September 2nd are 2,280 tanks, 4,610 vehicles, 249 command posts and communication stations, 908 artillery systems and vehicles.
Look, I don't know what the feeling is to the Russian people, but how is Putin is gonna seen as favorably to any Russian post all this? Like, all this did is kill a lot of Russians, obviously Ukraine as well, but from the Russian side, it killed a lot of Russians, and for what? So, I don't know. So unless Putin takes over Ukraine as a whole and somehow sells this war as some kind of a victory, I don't know. And even if he takes Ukraine, it's like Russia has to worry about Ukraine as well, right? That's the problem. You can't just take over a country. Like, now you have to, take care of that country, which is going to be strain itself, right? Taking on Crimea kind of hurted Russian economy a lot.
257 multiple rocket launchers, 88 aircraft, 104 helicopters, and 294 drones. For Ukraine, these are 631 tanks, 1,972 vehicles, 16 command posts and communication stations, 392 artillery systems and vehicles, 50 multiple rocket launchers, 71 aircraft, 34 helicopters, and 177 drones.
Way too
More
heavy
videos on
losses
this
on Russian
topic
side.
are on the way, so make sure you are subscribed and press the bell button. Please consider liking, subscribing.
Yeah, way too many casualties from Russian side, but then again, that's kind of like historically accurate thing. That's what happens with all wars when Russia's involved, right? So it doesn't necessarily mean Russia's losing or something. I don't know. It feels like a stalemate or something, right? I don't know where this is going. There is no aggressive thing I am seeing so far. So I don't know what strategy people have, right? Like, is Russia basically just happy with the war as itself? I don't know. Somehow it can make money like through war or something. I don't know what's happening, but I don't see any side, having some kind of a strong strategy of all, right? I don't know. Maybe they're waiting for next year or something. I don't know. They're waiting for something. I know Russia has a lot of big ass weapons that they are not using, thank God. But once we hear in news like some devastating weapons being used, I'm not just talking about nuclear weapon, any other too, right? But as soon as we hear that, yeah, that's gonna escalate a lot. Alright, well, that was 300 Russians casualties in Ukraine, vice Kings in general. If you like my reaction, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.